Hello, chess fans. Welcome to another edition of Chess Chat, a program brought to you live from the Workers' Credit Union studio at Fitchburg Access Television. I am George Merijanian, your host and program director of the Wachusett Chess Club at Fitchburg State University. This club meets every Wednesday evening from 6:30 to 10:30 in rooms 142 and 143 of the McKay Complex at the university. And with me today for this edition of Chess Chat is once again our award-winning director, Darren Dame of Fitchburg, who is now in his 16th consecutive year directing Chess Chat. And assisting him in the control room and also behind the camera is a longtime Wachusett Chess Club member, Brian Bigelow, also of Fitchburg. And sitting across from me is my trusty associate, longtime colleague, chess photographer, chess author, active chess tournament player, Dave Couture of Westminster. Hello, Dave.
Hi, George.
Good to see you again, Dave.
Good to see you.
Well, Dave, we had a major tournament held 3 weeks ago. Actually, it was March 20th. At the Westford Regency Inn in Westford.
Yep.
And it was the Massachusetts Game 60 Championship. Now, what does that mean, the Game 60 Championship? To our viewers, what would that mean if you said it was a Game 60?
Each player gets 60 minutes total for all their moves for the entire game.
All right, so there is basically one time control.
Right.
To play the entire game,
Yep.
you have 60 minutes
Each player has 60
thinking
minutes,
time.
right.
And I believe they also, nowadays, they use a delay. There could be a delay.
5-second delay,
5-second
probably,
delay?
yeah.
Okay. Well, again, this was a major event and it had an excellent attendance. They had, in this pandemic, we're still in this pandemic, 170 players.
Wow.
And that was very impressive.
Yeah, that is.
And that was 170 players in 6 sections. They had a championship section, the top section, and then they had actually 5 other sections based on rating, under 2,000, under 18, under 16,
Yep.
14, 12. But we had a winner, a clear winner, with a perfect score, an international master from Massachusetts, who used to live in Pepperell, by the way, and his name is Denis Schmelov. Now, we did a program of Denis Schmeloff about 2 years ago.
Okay.
It was in January of 2020 when he won the Harry Nelson Pillsbury Memorial Tournament in December of 2019. But again, he won this tournament, this recent tournament, but he's a former state champion. He won the state championship of Massachusetts in 2008, and then actually he, in that same year, he tied for first in the New England Championship in Nashua, New Hampshire. And one of the ones he tied with was John Crudo. Now, we did a program, 5 months ago, celebrating John Curdo's 90th birthday. John Curdo was a living legend in chess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But getting back to Denis Schmelov, Denis Schmelov was born in Ukraine. And what's interesting about Denis Schmelov is that he retains his affiliation with the Ukrainian Chess Federation.
Oh, really?
Now, he's been in this country since at least 2004. I first met him when I think he was 18 years old, back in 2000. It was maybe it was, it was around 4 or 5. Anyways, he was just about to start school at the University of Massachusetts at Lowell. And he went to UMass Lowell, majored in economics, got his bachelor's degree, and then went on to the University of Connecticut in Storrs and got a master's degree in mathematics and also actuarial science.
Okay.
And he became, and he is right now today, an insurance actuary.
Okay.
Yeah. And he is, again, he is one of the strongest players in New England, definitely in Massachusetts. He is currently the highest rated international master in the state of Massachusetts.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're saying, so if you go on the FIDE site, it would say he's a Ukrainian player?
Yes.
Okay.
If you were actually to Google his name, Denis Shmelov, he spells it D-E-N-Y-S, Shmelov, S-H-M-E-L-O-V, you would find out, here is a photo that was on the cover of Chess Horizons. What's the year, 2016?
16, yeah.
Okay, so he's been on the cover more than once, Denis Shmelov. And again, as I told you, he lived in Pepperell. That's where I first met him, when he was living with his mother and stepfather in Pepperell. And again, and back in 2008, I believe, he went out to California and played in a international tournament. It was held in Berkeley, and got a norm, what we call a Grandmaster norm.
Grandmaster norm, okay.
Now, unfortunately, that was like, what, back in 2008. How many years? That's what, 14 years ago?
14 years, yeah.
In order to become a Grandmaster, you need to acquire, I think, three norms, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a time limit as far as these norms have to be accomplished within a certain amount of time.
Okay.
So, but I think that's his next objective, is to acquire more Grandmaster norms, so he could become a Grandmaster, because he is certainly strong enough to be a Grandmaster.
Right.
He has beaten Grandmasters in various New England tournaments, including Grandmaster Alexander Ivanov, who's probably the most active Grandmaster among all the Grandmasters. Okay, so Dennis, actually, there's a nice photo of him. By the way, this photo was taken at the Metro West Chess Club at the Senior Center in Natick. In the background, I think you see with the board set up for bingo. They play bingo there. Yep. So, but he was an active player until the club closed, of course, in the pandemic in 2020. And of course, that club has not actually reopened. But he was a very active player at the Metro West Chess Club, as well as the Waltham Chess Club on Friday nights.
Okay.
The Metro West Club is a Tuesday night club. And he also was playing, I believe he was playing in Billerica, Billerica Chess Club. So he was a very active player. He won the tournament, as I say, the Mass Game 60 with a perfect score. But you know actually how many rating points he won? He won all 4 games.
Yeah.
How many rating points do you think he won? He beat, actually one of the players he beat was a National Master Lawyer Times. Yeah. And we've talked about him in the program before. How many ratings?
I'm going to guess 10.
I want you to guess how many rating points. He beat 4 strong players.
Yeah.
How many rating points?
I'm guessing 10.
Okay. Well, he gained 1 point. Yeah. All that work.
Just because his rating was so much higher.
His rating now, I believe, is 20. He's gone up to 2541.
Wow.
Yeah. So all that work on a one-day tournament, and he gains 1 point.
Right.
But again, he's again one of the strongest players in New England. Now, we are going to present to our Chess Chat viewers a game, not a game from the tournament because all his games are lengthy. Yep. We're going to present a game from his career, which he played, I believe, was it 2009? What was the year?
2009, yep.
It was played actually Labor Day weekend. It was the New England Open in Nashua, New Hampshire, and he played against New England's living legend, John Crudo. Yep. It was played in the first round of the New England Open that year, 2009. And John Crudo had white in the game.
He did, yes.
And how did John Crudo open the game against international master Dennis Schmelov?
So John opened with E4.
Okay, good opening move.
Most popular first move.
I believe John, in fact, John actually has played other opening moves such as F4.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, but I've never seen John Crudo ever play D4 or C4. But E4 is his most popular opening move. Now, Dennis Schmeloff, in response to that, played the pawn on C7 to C5. Now, we have presented scores of games where this has been played. What is the name of this defense that Black is playing?
So this is the Sicilian.
Right. And wouldn't you say this is probably the most popular defense against the pawn to go into E4?
Because it unbalances the position, so Black has, a chance to play for a win.
Right. Okay. So how did John Crudo continue on his second move?
He develops his knight to F3.
Okay. We see it on our board now. The knight on G1 is going to F3.
Yeah,
okay.
Again, the most common second move in the Sicilian.
All right. And to which Dennis Schmelov played the pawn on E7 to E6. E6 is his move.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, he could have played, there were other moves. He could have played the pawn to D6. That was a playable move.
Which is actually more common. But
yeah, right. But E6, nothing wrong with E6.
Right. It opens a diagonal for the bishop.
Yes. All right. What is John Crudo's third move?
So he plays his other pawn to D4.
Okay. And this is why he played knight F3 to prepare D4.
Right.
Okay. All right. So Dennis Schmelov, his response: C pawn takes on D4. C takes D4, is his move. Okay, what does Crudo do now?
He plays knight takes d4.
Okay, see, we do see the knight on f3 now capturing the pawn on d4. Okay.
So you can say black has the advantage of having 2 pawns in the center.
Right, okay.
To white's 1.
Right. Now, here is where black, Dennis Shmelov, plays the knight on b8 to c6.
Yeah.
Now, we have reached a position early in the game where there is a name attached to this variation that black is playing.
That's right.
And it is known as the...
I don't recall.
You know,
Because weren't there like 2 different names for
yes,
Paulson?
there was actually Louis Paulson, who was a player who was born in Germany, who came and lived in the United States. This goes back in the 1800s, mid-1800s. But another player who, in more recent times, who played this move, knight c6, is a Russian grandmaster, now deceased, by the name of Taimano, Mark Taimano, who, by the way, we did a program on him years ago, because he was a concert pianist. Yes. So this is known as either the Paulson variation or the Taimano variation. Okay, what did John Crudo do in response to knight c6, the Taimano variation?
So he played a move which, I mean, has been played before, but it sort of surprised both of us, right? He takes the knight on c6.
That is a surprise.
It's kind of a surprise.
There was no need to do that. I mean, he could have developed another piece for,
Right.
Yeah.
He could have played a bishop to e3, for example.
Okay. But of course, in response to this, black, Schmeloff, he's not going to take with the d pawn, because take with the d pawn allow actually the queens to be exchanged, and black would forfeit castling, the king would be caught in the middle, so he takes back with the b pawn. B takes c6, that's his move. All right, so now it is Crudo's...
so he's sort of helping black, develop towards the center.
Right, exactly.
So it's a little bit surprising.
Right, okay. Excuse me. So what happens next?
Now he develops his bishop to d3.
Okay. It looks like he's getting rid of the castle. Okay.
Exactly.
So with the bishop on d3, Dennis Shmelov plays knight f6 on his 6th move.
Right.
Okay. Now, before we play John Curtail's next move, let's point out to our viewers a move that a beginner might make in a position like this.
Sure, because it looks tempting to just push the pawn to e5 to attack the knight.
Right.
So it looks like, okay, the knight's going to have to move away, but that's not the case.
Yeah, this is a mistake, to attack the knight early like this, because this is punished by how? How does...
You're going to show us.
Well, in response to this, we're not going to move the knight, that's not the attack.
Right.
We're going to bring a queen on d8 to a5, check the king, forcing the king actually to move out of check by blocking, like with knight c3. But the queen is going to capture the pawn on e5 with check.
With check, so
Yeah, so this loses a pawn.
Just loses a pawn.
No, so that would be what a beginner might do. That's why in chess you have to actually be observant, Stace, be attentive to the position on the board. Okay, so what John Curtail did was the castle.
Curtail castles.
Right. Okay, now it's Schmelov's move, his 7th, and he plays the pawn to d5. That's his move. Now we have actually a knight and a pawn attacking the pawn on e4, which is only defended once.
Right.
So what does Curtail do now in response to that?
He develops knight to d2. Besides developing, it also adds another defender to the pawn on e4.
All right. All right. So Schmelov's move, he plays on his 8th move, bishop e7. He goes there. Okay. Looks like he's getting ready to castle by playing the bishop to e7. Okay. What does Curtail do now? It's his 9th move coming up.
9th move. He plays c4.
Okay. So now we have the pawn on c4 attacking. There's an attack on the pawn on d5. But of course, that's adequately defended.
Sure.
That pawn on d5 is definitely defended by black.
4 times. So,
4 times. 2 pawns, a knight, and a queen. So there's no danger here as far as losing a pawn by black. All right. After c4, Dennis Mello says, hey, I'm in a castle. That was the whole purpose of playing the bishop to e7, to allow that. All right. So that was actually his 9th move. All right. Now, it is the John Curtail's 10th move. Now, before we play what he played, what could he have played here? What can he play here, or what could he have played here, which he didn't do? I think you pointed out that the queen moving here
Oh, sure, yeah.
was a very good move, because the threat is to advance the pawn to the knight,
Right.
and after this knight has to save itself by retreating to d7 or e8, the bishop is going to take the pawn and would check.
Right, that's right. So
yeah.
in the opening databases, it showed this as being a much more common move.
This is more common.
Queen to c2 is a more common move.
But he didn't do that.
He didn't do that.
Curtail played the queen to e2.
e2.
All right, okay. So, but again, he had the opportunity to play a stronger move.
I think so, yeah.
By playing the queen to c2. All right, this is where Dennis Schmeloff. See, one of the problems that Dennis has here is the development of this light squared bishop.
Right.
Well, he now plays the pawn on a7 to a5.
Right.
So he's going to try to seek some sort of play on the queen side.
Right. Now he could develop the
Now he
bishop
could-
here
yes.
without blocking the pawn.
Right.
Yeah.
The bishop is be able to come out to a6
Right.
by doing that. Okay, what does John Curdo do now? It's his,
So Curtail plays b3, so does a couple things. It stops him from pushing the pawn again.
Right.
It also opens up
for the bishop.
path to
Right, for the dark
bishop to
square bishop,
develop,
for
yeah.
white. Okay. All right. So Dennis said, well, okay, fine. I'm going to continue, I can still advance.
Can still advance,
I
yep.
still advance the pawn to a4. So he played a4 on his 11th move.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to see, we see it there. Yeah, a4, there it is, the black pawn on a4. All right, John Curdo's move, what does he do?
So he finishes his development, develops the last piece, bishop to b2.
Okay, right, bishop b2. All right, now here is where Dennis Schmeloff plays now the bishop on
Right.
c8 to a6. Finally, he's got the bishop now into play
Yep.
along this diagonal. Okay. All right, it's now Curdo's move. What does John Curdo do now after bishop a6?
So now he finally pushes e5.
Aha.
Kicking the
Now
knight.
he attacks
Yep.
the knight. Okay. Where is that knight going? In fact, I only see 2 squares it can go to.
Right.
It could go back to e8, but that would actually hem in this rook here.
Exactly, yeah.
But by going back to d7, which he did, he's putting pressure on the pawn on e5, which is adequately defended by the queen.
Right.
But there could be additional pressure put on that pawn.
Right.
Like, for example, with the queen. But again, that was the best retreating move, was
Right.
knight to d7.
And the knight could also come to c5 at some point,
Yes.
attacking the bishop.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so John Curdo's move, what does he do now? It's his 14th move.
Yeah. Looks like he wants to attack on the king side. He plays f4.
All right, which also adds another protector.
Another defender. Yeah.
Another defender of the pawn on e5. All right, so now we actually have, after e5, okay, we have, oh, well, here's where Dennis says, you know what? I don't like this bishop here. I think I'm going to advance. I'm not going to take the pawn on b3.
Right.
I'm going to advance the pawn to a3 and attack the bishop on b2,
Right.
forcing that bishop to move. Now, where does that bishop move to? Where does it save itself?
So he plays bishop to d4.
Right, plays bishop d4, which allows Dennis Schmeloff now to play bishop to c5. Remember, he's got to protect it by the knight on
Right,
d7,
yep.
so he can play this. And now he's attacking an unprotected piece,
Yep.
a bishop on d4.
Yep.
So now here is where I think John Curdo might have made a
Slightly better move. Right.
yes, he made actually an inferior move. He had a better move. What should he have done here? Well, he didn't do it. But what could he have done?
He could have simply pulled the bishop back.
Right, exactly.
So that, if
So that if black
Schmeloff,
shows
right,
yeah.
if Schmeloff wanted to exchange bishops, then he'd be able to recapture with the rook and maybe double his
Oh,
rooks
and then
here.
vacate the f1 square for the other
Right.
rook to come over.
Right.
Yeah.
But instead, he takes on c5
Right.
and
Yeah.
allows
The knight now
the knight to come forward.
right,
so.
and that's what Schmeloff did.
So Schmeloff, I would think, would be happy with that trade.
Right, knight takes c4. Right, we're very happy with the
Right.
trade because now Dennis Schmeloff is now attacking this bishop. He would love to get rid of that bishop
Sure, yeah.
on the white square, and of course John Curdo is not going to allow that.
Right.
So what does he do?
Pulls it back to c2.
Okay, so the bishop saves itself by retreating to c2, and here is where Dennis Schmeloff now captures the pawn on c4 with the d pawn.
Yep.
D takes c4, is his move. Okay. So, and look at, there's a nasty threat here, is there not? I mean, as far as...
Sure, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, he's
yeah.
got to be careful about, you know,
Right,
that
he's
pawn
threatening,
getting
yes,
pushed.
right. This is going to, yes, right. So he can't allow that, but of course, what does he do in response to that?
Yeah, so it's a little bit surprising. He could have taken with the pawn.
Which I think is better.
Yeah.
We
but
thought
he
it was
took-
better.
Right, he takes with the knight, but now that knight is pinned
Yes.
to the
right.
queen, so that knight can't move until the queen gets out of the way. But even
So-
if the queen gets out of the way, then it'll be pinned to the rook, so.
So he was better off taking
With
on
the-
c4 with the pawn,
with the
the
pawn,
b
yeah,
pawn,
yeah.
as opposed to playing with the knight. Okay, this allows Denis Shmelov to play queen d4 check.
Yeah.
The queen now attacks the king, and now what does white do here? What does Crudo do in response to this check?
No, but you know, a reasonable, probably even a better choice, he could have just blocked with the queen.
Yes.
Basically forcing him to either trade or move the queen away. But he plays king to h1.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Queen f2, offering the trade of queens, was a better move.
Yeah. Would almost force him to trade queens.
Right, yeah, right, exactly. So after king h1, well, now we actually have, what do we have here? Oh, we're going to take here. Denis Shmelov took this knight on c4 with the bishop.
Yep.
Bishop takes c4, okay, that's what he did. He got rid of that knight, and of course, how does actually John Crudo respond? How does he recapture that bishop?
He could have taken with the queen, but he takes with the pawn.
But if you take with the queen, he was offering the exchange of queens.
Yeah.
But he chooses. See, he wants to hold on to his queen by taking with
Right,
the pawn.
apparently, yep.
Right. All right. So now here is what Denis Mello does in response to that. He doesn't like the idea of the possibility of this pawn advancing on f5
Right,
here. So he plays g6. Right. That's his move. Okay, yep. G6 is his move, and now I think we agreed when we previewed this game that maybe there was a mistake here by John.
Curtail, yeah. I mean, Curtail could have just played the rook here right now, but instead he played rook to d1.
Right.
And because of what happens next.
Yeah. If he had played the rook on a1 to the c1, it would relieve, actually, after he moves the bishop, would relieve the queen from having to defend that pawn on c4. Right. But now he's tied down, trying to hold on to that pawn on c4 with the queen. All right. So the queen is actually doing double duty here, defending the pawn on c4. So after rook a d1, which is John Crudo's move, here is where Denis Shmelov comes in here.
Right.
Queen b2, attacks an undefended pawn on a2.
Right. Pins the bishop.
Right, yeah, the bishop is, the bishop is pinned, a very awkward position to be in, having that pin.
And now Curtail plays the rook to c1, so he could have just done this in one move.
He could have done this in one move. It took him two moves where he could have done it in one, so that could be costly when you have to take two moves where you could have done it in one move.
Yep.
So after rook c1, here is where Denis Shmelov now plays the rook on f8, over to the open d file, rook f d8.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's always good to seize an open file.
Right.
If you have rooks, and if you can actually take control of an open file, do it.
Yep.
Immediately grab an open file like that.
Yep.
So that's what Denis did, rook f d8. All right, now this pin, the bishop is very uncomfortable, so that's why John Crudo plays what?
Queen to f3.
Yes.
Attacking upon c6 and relieving the pin.
Right, relieves the pin now.
So now that bishop can move.
So, and Denis Shmelov, of course, sees this, that this pawn is under attack, and he plays his last piece, which he has not developed, he brings it rook on a8 to c8, and defends the pawn on c6.
Yep.
Okay. So materially, we're still even, right? Six pawns, and it's the white bishop versus black knight, versus the two rooks. Okay, now what does John Crudo do? What's his continuation
So he really wants to open up the king side, so he plays f5.
Okay. However, on that move, in response to that, Schmeloff just simply takes with the e-pawn. E takes f5. That was his move, right? E takes f5?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so what is Crudo going to do now? What was accomplished by doing that? Well, here is where he he has had the opportunity to play a good move here. He missed it.
Yeah, I don't think it's obvious.
No, it's not obvious.
It's not obvious.
How many players would do this? Actually,
yeah, this is what he could have done. He could have taken here.
Right. Yes, right.
Opened up.
Opened up.
The
Oh,
king,
yes.
And then he would have been able to check.
Yes.
Repeatedly, and he could have forced a draw.
Right. Again, this is yeah. We agree. We went over this.
Yeah.
And our fans have to believe us when we say yes. This was the move that John Curtail missed.
Yeah.
If he had played bishop takes the pawn on f5,
Could have forced a draw.
he could have forced a draw, and he would not have a losing position if he'd done that.
Yeah.
But he chose to do what?
G4.
He chose to attack the pawn on f5 with the g pawn.
Yeah.
All right. So now this allows Denis Schmeloff now to take this rook on d8 and come down to his 7th rank.
Yeah.
Oh, very dangerous.
Very dangerous.
And look at this. He's got a double attack on the bishop on c2. We got 2 pieces attacking the bishop, only defended once by the rook.
And if the bishop were to move, then the rook would just come here and take that.
Yes, would check. So this is very nasty. So this shows you how g4, playing g4, has turned the tables on this game immediately. On rook d2, John Crudo says, well, he's going to continue with his attack. He takes.
Might as well, yeah.
G takes f5.
Takes f5.
Okay, and this is where I believe Shmelov comes back with the queen.
Right.
Takes pawn on e5. That's what he did.
No, he's threatening to checkmate on the next
Oh,
move.
yes.
Queen takes.
He
checkmate.
is threatening checkmate on the move with queen takes h2 mate. Okay.
Yep.
So that means that square has to be protected. How does Curtail respond to
Curtail
that?
plays queen h3 to protect it.
Okay. Now, this is where Shmelov now plays the rook on c8 over to e8. Okay. So this is very nasty. All right, how does John continue now in this position?
Yeah, I think he knows things are fairly desperate, so he plays just very aggressive, desperate moves. F takes g6. Now, he's threatening come down, check, and then mate. On
He's
the next
threatening
move.
mating too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But of course, Denis Shmelov just recaptures here.
Yeah.
H takes g6 is his move.
Yeah.
Okay. And now it's White's move, Curdo's move. What does he do?
So queen h6.
Right. Okay. And now with Shmelov's next move, which I'm going to execute on the board here, queen e2. With this move, John Curtail resigns. Why did he resign? Because he cannot stop mate. He's got to protect the square here. Yeah. And how does he do this? I mean, if he were to bring the rook over, let's say he brought the rook over here, this g1, which protects the square, the game is lost. How is the game lost? Because he will play queen
here,
f3 check. He can only block with the rook.
Right.
And then the queen takes on g2. It's mate.
Yep.
It was mate in all different ways.
Yep.
There's no way he could control the g2 square.
Yep.
So, anyways, I don't know whether I have time to our viewers. I'm going to just quickly, with a very time remaining, the other winners actually in the tournament. I'm going to give the section winners. In the other 2000 section, we had Nicholas Brinkman of Connecticut and Nikolai Avdokhin of Massachusetts, who tied for first. In the under 1800 section, Maxim Klemf, with a perfect score, won that section. Under 1600 section, Sudeep Kumar Pandey won that section. And under 1400 section, Anya Yadawad won that section. Under 1200 section, Allah Sinshue Zhang won that section. So we had a lot of actually players of either Chinese ancestry or Indian ancestry who did very well at the Massachusetts Game 16. So we hope our chess fans enjoyed the game that David and I presented to you. We'll see you on the next edition of Chess Chat.